Welcome to Finding Your Inner Mr. Rogers. I'm Todd Faber, and I believe in a world of noise and speed, the most radical thing we can be is kind. We often think about leadership as being in charge, but Fred Rogers taught us that true leadership is about being in service to the dignity of others. My guest today is Steve Gross, a clinical social worker, a champion for vulnerable kids, and the Chief Playmaker at Life is Good. I like to think of him as Mr. Rogers in a hoodie. Steve is an internationally recognized pioneer in the field of trauma-informed care, a clinical social worker, and the founder and chief playmaker of the Life is Good Playmaker Project. For over 30 years, Steve has dedicated his career to a singular, profound mission, utilizing the power of play to heal, strengthen, and protect the world's most vulnerable children. Rather than view play as a simple distraction, Steve has codified it into a sophisticated, clinical discipline capable of restoring psychological safety to children who've survived unimaginable adversity, including natural disasters, poverty, and systemic violence. As a leader, Steve has brought his frontline expertise to communities in deep crisis, from post-earthquake Haiti to Newtown, Connecticut. Simultaneously, he's trained more than 16,000 educators, healthcare workers, and social workers, teaching them how to maintain their own optimism and prevent compassion fatigue. Steve beautifully scales Fred Rogers' legacy into both the nonprofit and corporate landscapes. He proves that optimism is not a passive emotion, but a fierce, courageous choice, and that radical kindness is the ultimate strategy for unlocking human potential and leaving the neighborhood better than we found it. Welcome to the neighborhood, Steve.
Todd, thanks, brother. Appreciate that. That was quite an intro, man.
Well,
Did you write
you're
that
quite a
or
guy.
my mother write that?
No, I did reach out to her briefly, and
Okay.
she tweaked it. Listen, I am so thrilled to have you on this. I kid you not. Like, as I was thinking about this last night, I'm like, yeah, this dude is literally Fred Rogers in a hoodie. Like, I got the Fred Rogers gear here. I should have just
Hey,
brought a hoodie for you.
I would have been, I like the cardigan, but it just never quite worked for me, man.
I bet you could pull it off.
I don't
If
know, man. I
if
tried.
Fred can do it, I think you can too. Um, but we talk about this. We're being playful now, but I do appreciate it, and I do appreciate all the work that you did, and I'm so thrilled that you decided to join the podcast, as you do really epitomize exactly what it is I'm trying to convey to the rest of the world. So thank you. So with that, we'll just jump right in. Um, you know, as I was doing some research, you often say that play isn't just what you do, it's how you do everything you do. So for a leader like yourself, when you're dealing with leaders who are in a serious or high stakes industry and they feel like they don't have time or permission to play, how do you explain that a playful disposition is actually a prerequisite for resilience, creativity, and elite problem solving?
Well, if you don't have time to play, it's just like, I just don't have time to be, because I'm talking about playing as a state of being. So, I define it as like freely and joyfully engaging, connecting, and exploring with the world around you. Like, if you don't have time to engage, connect, and explore the world around you, how do you do anything? So, I don't think it takes any more time to, you know, to engage the world in a joyful way. And joyful, by the way, doesn't mean just like, everything is wonderful, everything's fine, everything is perfect. It's really about this kind of enduring sense of positivity, of purpose. So again, like, I don't look at play as what you do at all. It's the spirit and intention with which you do everything that you do. You and I are going to play today. If we're
Right.
not, nobody's going to watch or listen to this podcast because it's not going to mean anything. It's going to be brutal to listen to. Sometimes have teachers will say like, "Oh, we don't have time to play in school anymore. We're doing history and math and science." And it's like, well, play history, math, and science.
Right.
If that's the subject matter, if we can't teach these things with a level of joy, um, how are kids going to be interested? And so when I think about this idea of play, it's like the intersection of these four domains. One of joyfulness, which is a sense of, pleasure and purpose. One is social connection, which we all know how important it is for people to feel part of something bigger than themselves. One of them is active engagement, just to simply be inspired and present in the moment. And the other is a sense of internal control. And internal control meaning like, I have some choice, I have some voice, I am strong, I am worthy, I am capable, I have some agency. And so when people are engaged in the moment, where they feel some sense of purpose, where they feel connected to other people, where they feel empowered, well, then they can achieve great things. Um, a lot of times, and I know, I promise I won't answer every question this long.
No, no,
I
that's
always
okay.
talk
This is
about like two types of people in the world. People who, go to work and collect their check, and I'm just doing my job, and nobody's inspired by somebody who's just doing their job. And other people who come to play. And you hear that in sports a lot of times. Like, this athlete comes to play every day. It means they are passionate about what they do. They feel proud of what they do. They put everything, their heart and soul, behind what they do. And you appreciate that. As a fan, you love a player who is coming to play, who's passionate, not just somebody who's punching the clock and just doing their job. So again, I think it's really about attitude and energy. Not something that takes any extra time.
it's that's interesting because, well, first of all, this is why I was looking forward to this podcast, because of the energy that you bring to it. But it really, it's just simply the notion of being wed to whatever mission it is that you're doing, whether it's your job or a nonprofit that you're fundraising for or a sports team or whatever. But sometimes, obviously, it is hard for people to get up to that level every day, right? To wake up every day. And so the idea of perhaps giving a little bit of intention every time you wake up in the morning to think, what positive thing am I going to get out of today?
Well, I also think, though, Todd, like, nobody can do it every day.
Right.
Like, I mean, there's a thing like, and again, I don't want to sound self-righteous or this is easy. It's like when someone talks about how important it is to be present. So think about like
Yes.
mindfulness.
Yes.
Well, no one says you're going to be mindful every moment of the day. They're saying that mindfulness is important, and as a human being, sometimes we're going to slip, and all of a sudden we're not going to be mindful. We're going to catch ourselves, and then we're going to readjust and recalibrate and come back to it. I think this idea of, you know, freely and joyfully engaging, connecting, exploring with the world is a goal. It's what you strive to do. And then we're human. So some days we're not going to feel it. We're not going
Right.
to feel energized, or we're going to feel disconnected, or we're going to feel like we've lost a little bit of our passion, or we're exhausted. And then the trick is noticing when that happens, accepting it. Don't beat yourself up and go, wow, how am I going to get back towards where I want to be? I think of it sometimes like, when you type in your destination to your navigation system, and it tells you where you're going to go, and sometimes you take a wrong turn. It just says recalibrating,
Yeah.
recalculating.
Yeah.
Okay, we made a wrong turn, or we notice that we're going in the wrong direction. First thing you got to do is notice, and then you're like, I want to strive to get back on track if that's important to you. Um, so, to me, it's not like, hey, someone is going to always be in this state. But I can't think of anyone who wouldn't choose to be able to approach life with some joy, some purpose, a sense of positivity, a sense of connection, a sense of empowerment and inspiration. But, life has a way of sometimes beating us down. And so we got to kind of dust ourselves off and get back there.
Sometimes it's the idea of how do you recover from it, and you reclaim that joy, and then when you do, sometimes that joy is even more meaningful because you felt what it's like to not be. It's interesting you use the analogy with the GPS just anecdotally. So Jen and I were in Ireland back in April, and we were sort of on the West Coast, and I hated driving in Ireland. It was horrible, like apps, like I white knuckled my way through the Great Atlantic Way or whatever they called it. But this one place that we were hitting for the third time, in terms of just going back to where we were staying, it's supposed to have told us to take a right, but it didn't. And instead, we kept going straight. And first, I turned to Jen and I go, "Oh my God, look at! I'm kind of glad we missed that turn. Look at all this beautiful scenery that we have here." And then all of a sudden, it banged a hard left up this scary, windy dirt path that I was like incredibly nervous driving down. So it basically took us about 20 minutes out of the way, and we ended up back to where we started, where we should have taken the right. 15 minutes up the road, we're stopped abruptly because a farmer is moving his cows down the street, and we're just sitting there like completely marveling at all these beautiful animals just walking down the street past our car. And I turn to Jen and I go, that's why we missed the turn. Because of that reason, like finding that joy, and it was the aggravation of missing it, and then reclaiming the joy back and realizing, oh my God, we missed the turn, because if we hadn't missed the turn, we never would have caught those cows on the road because we would have been past that area. So,
Well, and who knows what would have happened if you didn't miss it? Like that's the thing that's interesting about life.
yeah,
You never know what happens when you take a certain path if if you don't take it. And I don't want to be morbid, but you're like, who knows? Maybe you're taking this path and you have an accident or you break down. Like we just don't know. So there's a Buddhist quote. I don't know if it's a Buddhist quote or what somebody told me who happened to be Buddhist, that the roots of misery are wanting things to be different than they are. And it doesn't do a whole lot of good to just like, damn, I can't believe we missed that turn. All that energy is there,
yes.
as opposed to like, okay, we missed that turn.
What's
What
next?
next?
Yeah, I agree.
And maybe it's funny because I'm a Celtic fan, and everyone's been buzzing,
Yeah.
like instantly about this terrible. We lost Jaylen Brown, and what did we get, and all this stuff, and kind of like I had that first bit of shock, and people are like, I'm not going to watch the Celtics anymore. It's a disaster. My kind of thing now is like, okay, well, let's look at the players we still got.
Right.
Still love Derek White, and I love Peyton Pritchard, and I love Jason Tatum, and I like some of these new guys. And hey, Paul George is an older guy, but he's still got some game left in him. And I'm still gonna try. I'm still gonna enjoy watching basketball.
As you
Doesn't
should.
mean like that. Okay, how long am I gonna dwell on how miserable this trade is? And the other thing to just go like, hey, who knows what's going to happen? I don't know. So it's the other thing though, I want to be clear, like, because I'm a pretty positive guy. I'm a pretty
Yes, you are.
and some would say to a fault, like rationalize and well, hey, look on the bright side, and one thing you want to be very careful of when you're kind of wired like me is not kind of expecting it from other people, or kind of putting it on other people to behave the same way. Hey, cheer up, look on the bright side, look at the positive thing. Like sometimes when people are trying to ram positivity down your throat, it's very, very annoying. So, I kind of recognize that there's a difference between being an upbeat guy and being toxically positive.
Yeah.
Or using positivity as a weapon. Hey, look at me. I'm so positive. You should try the same thing. Everyone has their own way of going through life. And so, I tend to quickly try to recover and find the blessing, and try to kind of look on the brighter side of things, because it just happens to work for me. I don't like to dwell on the miserable, especially if there's nothing I can do to control it.
Well, that's the big thing, right? Is that when we are in those situations, more often than not, what's coming at us are things that are outside our control. But I would look at you more in terms of your level of positivity as it reflects on other people as being supportive, right? And there is a difference between being overtly, sickeningly positive and trying to push that behavior on somebody else, as opposed to being positive and then turning that into a support mechanism, which is a lot of what you guys do, right? When you're in Haiti or Newtown or some of the other places you've gone, you've done a great job of lifting people up with positivity. And there's a nuanced difference. I mean, we look at Fred Rogers was a radical optimist,
Todd,
and
can I ask
especially,
you can I interrupt just for 1 second?
well, yeah, of
Because
course,
I'll probably forget what I was going to say.
no worries.
And I think what's important, really important, especially when you talk about Haiti and Newtown, and when absolutely horrible things happen in communities that are devastating, I don't think you immediately come in here with this intention of lifting people up. If you kind of do, it comes across as disrespectful to their grief and pain. I think kind of the first thing that you do in those situations is sit with people in their grief and bear witness and be present for people who are suffering and try to support them however you can in that moment to meet their immediate needs. Before you ever kind of come in and like, hey, cool, now what are we going to do to kind of make things better? There's a piece there where you got to be able to sit with the pain. You got to be able to bear witness to the pain. You got to be able to listen and hear and feel where people are hurting and then what they see their need being and what they need, and then figuring out if you can actually be of service and help. Like, for example, in Haiti, it was like, when the earthquake first happened, people were like, dude, when are you going to Haiti?
Yeah.
And I said, well, nobody's invited me to Haiti. Like, what am I just going to show up in Haiti? I don't know anyone in Haiti, and no one's asked me to be there. And when I finally got the invitation to come and they asked what we could do, I said, well, before we talk about what we can do, I just want to visit Haiti. I want to come. I want to sit down. I want to be in the country. I want to get to talk to people. I want to get to meet people. I want to get to hear what local people feel like they need. And then if it's something we can do with that, I'd be honored to help. And so it became very clear when I was there, like, we're really worried about our kids. How are we going to help our kids feel comfortable enough to get back to school? How are we going to help them heal? They're having nightmares. And, I said, well, one of the things that I can offer is, how we can use play to help reestablish a sense of safety and community and joy. And people are like, that would be awesome. Can you do that? I was like, sure. And we can do it together. But it didn't just come with me saying, hey, I'm going to lift you up or I'm here. It was, you sit with people and you meet them where they are.
Yes.
And then you try to figure out where you can be of service. And that was kind of the same thing in Newtown, where it was like, hey, I want to sit there and I want to be there with folks in their grief, providing immediate support to people in the community, and then listening to what folks felt like they needed, which is how we're going to help our kids heal.
Yeah.
And, play was a big component of that. But I just wanted to make that point because I think this idea of coming in with play and joy following disaster and catastrophe and death and loss, it's a gradual process where you must bear witness to the pain, you must sit with the pain, you must be able to fully feel it. And then when people are ready, now how do you help people to kind of move through it and begin the healing process?
So for you, it really is truly understanding. I mean, because you can feel it to an extent, but it's the idea that you never walk in somebody else's shoes unless they're literally your shoes. But the idea for you with this project is going in and assessing in person what they're going through before determining what you guys can do. So I get it. Yeah,
And
I
you
get
don't
it.
go anywhere uninvited.
Right. No, that's good.
And uninvited, a full invitation to come. But also, whenever I do something with children or with communities, it's always an invitation. There's never you can't mandate play.
Right.
So sometimes you create an environment, you say, hey, I'd like for you all, I'd like to invite you all, if you feel comfortable, to participate in something. There's a whole bunch of ways you can participate. You can either jump in and play and actively participate, or you may choose to sit and watch, which is a more passive participation. But if you are in the room, if you are in the space, you're participating. And I think that invitation is essential to the concept of play. Because when I shared that definition, it's about freely engaging, connecting, and exploring. You can't mandate, I mean, you can tell someone they have to do this. I can tell someone they have to do this assignment, but I can't tell them to do it freely and joyfully. That
Right.
has to be that's a choice. You can't mandate joy.
No,
You can't
we'd like
mandate
to,
connection.
but we can't.
Well,
Right.
and sometimes we try and we rush
Yeah.
it and we say,
Right.
everyone get up and we're going to do this thing. And some people don't want to do it. And respecting where people are and where they're at. Because I made that mistake a bunch of times. I would come into a space and I'd see somebody and I'd invite people to come in and play, and there'd be somebody sitting back and not involved and maybe looking at their phone, and I'd make assumptions. This person's a sourpuss. This person doesn't want to do. This person's a dud. This person doesn't get it. And I give them the space, and then towards the middle of the day, they come home and say, "Hey, thank you for giving me that space. I'm going through some really tough stuff, but just sitting here and learning and having you like allow me to engage the way I want to engage, I just really appreciate it because I'm finding this stuff helpful, but I just don't have it in me right now to jump right in."
Well, that's
And
your example of meeting people where they are.
absolutely.
Yeah. Um, but given some of these places that you've been, and again, we talked about your own level of personal positivity, how are you able to maintain that when you're there, right? I mean, I sadly have the misfortune of I have three friends whose children were murdered in three separate school shootings, including Newtown. And I'm sitting back. I'm removed from it because it indirectly impacted me, right? But when you're there on the grounds, how do you manage that idea that life is still good when you see these things happening?
Well, I mean, let's go back because you talk about Fred Rogers. And, one of my, I didn't watch Mr. Rogers that much when I was a kid.
Shame on
Um,
you.
Sorry, I don't know. I think we weren't that like a PBS kind of family. I don't know why. I didn't watch
Yeah,
Sesame Street either.
that's okay.
But, that idea of like looking for the helpers.
Yep.
When you show up somewhere after a disaster, well, you're showing up with survivors and survivors who have experienced terrible loss, but they've survived and are looking to move on, and life goes on and it has to go on. And so, number one, for me, you get this privilege of getting to be of service. There's no greater gift to a human being than being able to do something that may actually help another human being, especially in a time of crisis and need. So, number one, like one of the things that keeps me going is being of purpose. The other thing that keeps me going is being part of a team. I never just go in there by myself. If I'm invited from someone in the community saying, "I want to help, I want to heal, I want to, this terrible thing has happened, and I want to do something to help the people whose lives have been impacted. Will you join me in that?" And I don't do this work alone. I do it with a team. So all of a sudden now you have this opportunity to be of service, which buoys you. You get to be of service with really good people who also want to help. So you're not doing this alone. And then I think this idea that when you're working with play and youth, and this idea that, kids never stop looking for joy.
Yeah.
I can remember, after September 11th, like I was at Logan Airport and I was part of the crew that was there with families and having to let kids know that their parent was not coming back. And a lot of the kids, even after that kind of first hearing that kind of news, most of them wanted to then do something, play or draw, or the invitation to actually do something when you feel completely powerless and overwhelmed, it's pretty palpable with kids. And there were young, especially young kids who went back to drawing, went back to playing. And, I think creating that space where in that moment when there's no words and you're completely overwhelmed, and maybe that you can fall back on doing something that allows you to feel some sense of safety, some sense of joy, even amidst all that pain and hardship. So, you have to, you don't always stay upbeat. It hurts. But I don't think it hurt, at least for me, like if I wasn't doing something about it, I'd hear about it, I'd watch it on the news, I'd have all that same pain of being exposed to it, but then I wouldn't have the ability to go like, hey, well, I get to do something that maybe might help alleviate some suffering on some level. And I get to do it with other people and I'm not alone. And so for me, that's a gift, because we all know, how, my father used to say, life in general is a traumatic experience. Nobody gets out of here alive, no matter how healthy we are. The death rate
Right.
remains one per person.
Right.
We know at some point when we realize we're mortal that not only are we going to die, but everyone we know and love is going to die too. And so you get confronted with that in life sometimes. And to me, I think the thing that saves me is feeling like you have something to offer that might be of value. And when Mr. Rogers said, hey, man, I like to look for the helpers. I do too. I like to look for the helpers and I like to try to be one. And I also know he didn't say you look for the rescuers and saviors, because that's another big thing about how that work doesn't crush you. I think sometimes when people come into situations, especially social workers or people who are helpers, we sometimes have a rescuer savior kind of complex.
Yeah.
And we want to make things go away. We want to make things like it never happened. We want to fix things. And there's some things in life you just can't fix. And so you have to go in there and be able to accept that maybe you might just be able to alleviate some suffering with little tiny acts of kindness, micro moments of love, but moments. It might be as simple as, offering somebody something to eat and something to drink, or giving them a Kleenex to wipe their eyes. So I know it's a long way of answering the question, but I just freaking love to be of service. And it's not because it's because if I didn't feel like I was being of service, life would feel pretty empty to me. That was my dad's thing. My dad used to always say, again, none of us had any control over our birth. We were just born. We don't have any control over the fact that we're mortal and that one day we're going to die. But we all have a choice to try to make somebody else's journey from birth to death better, because we were there to help along the way. And so I think for me, as long as you feel like what you're offering is helpful in some capacity, then it insulates you a little bit from some of the pain and horror of the situation that you're dealing with.
Well, it's like you were talking about at the beginning in terms of having that mission, right? And that's part of it. I think when you and I talked a couple of months ago, I mentioned to you the genesis of this podcast, and the core pillar of my philosophy is my 95% rule that I implemented when the girls were little, and the idea that find a way every day, if you can, to make somebody's life a little bit better, whether it's putting a smile on their face or doing something more grand, or just at least putting the effort in to try to do it. And the reality is that probably 95% of the people we manage are carrying unseen burdens or trauma. And as leaders, we want to leave the place better, like just what you're talking about. And so for leaders who are listening to this podcast, who are managing adults who carry this weight, what are sort of some basic ingredients that you can kind of turn a sterile, high-stress workplace into what you have often referred to as your oasis?
Well, all right, I'm gonna go back to Mr. Rogers.
Okay.
Okay, because part of what Mr. Rogers did on that show is he started to tell people that he saw them. He saw them. He looked into the screen. I see you. I mean, one of the most important things that you can do for any leader is, do you know the people that you're leading? Do you know what's meaningful to them? Do you know some of the stuff that they're going through? Do you know them as a human being first? And, um, my dad used to always say again, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mm.
Um, I don't want to be led by somebody who doesn't take any interest in who I am as a human being, doesn't care to know what's going on in my life or how I'm doing and to be actually sincerely interested. It doesn't cost you too much time to say, if I'm leading you to, hey, Todd, how are you? Good to
Mm.
see you, brother. How's things going? Things are going great. Well, tell me, man, what's happening? It's funny, and I'm not sure I recommend this, but I was at a high school reunion recently, and I was, it's been a long time for high school. And I started talking to them along, hey, what's new? What's going on? How's things? Everything was great, great, great. And finally, I said to one of the guys I was talking to, hey, what's one of the most challenging things you're dealing with right now? Like, what's not great? It was kind of a weird question, but he's like, wow, I'm actually going through a divorce. And I'm actually been struggling with this, this, and this. And we had this conversation. It was, a deep, wonderful conversation. We talked about the good stuff, quote unquote, the good stuff as well, but also the challenging stuff. We ask folks sometimes, and again, there's a time and place for everything. And hey, what are you reading? Reading any good books lately? Seen any good movies? What new restaurants you've been to? Like, hey, man, dealing with any challenges right now? Because I think sometimes we get superficial and we kind of expect just people to say everything's great. It was funny. I was just at the Obama Center. I got to do a talk for the Kellogg Foundation.
I
And
saw
I
that.
started out and I asked the audience, I wrote about it. I said, hey, how's everybody doing? Everyone was like, great. And then I stopped and I said, well, let me ask you it a different way. How are you really doing? And I said, if a good friend of yours said, tell me, use one word to describe how you've been feeling emotionally over the past few weeks, what would that word be? And I let them type it into a word cloud. Great didn't make the list. We were tired, we were overwhelmed, we were anxious, we were lonely, we were agitated. I mean, we're still hopeful and grateful and inspired, but sometimes you got to give permission to people to be vulnerable and talk about what's really going on. Life isn't easy for anybody. And at certain times, life can be challenging. So when you sit down with people that you lead and say, how's things going? Or you notice, like, hey, bro, I was just noticing at the meeting, you looked a little frustrated. Come sit. What's going on? But getting to know people, finding out what motivates them, what energizes them, and actually caring about human beings. That's the other thing about Mr. Rogers. The show was as simple as can be.
Yes.
I mean, it's not complicated to find moments to connect with people and find out how they're really doing and being really interested and seeing their strengths and seeing their humanity and seeing their goodness. And if you do that, you're going to be a much better leader.
I agree. And I think, to your point, allowing people to be vulnerable and giving them an opportunity to see that others are vulnerable as well does create a sense of comfort in that. And I said this to somebody the other day. I said, great leaders can create an environment both inside and outside the office where you feel like you have a shared humanity, right? Where you feel as if, okay, I can be vulnerable and, oh, he's anxious too, or she's frustrated. And that allows you in a leadership role or as a parent or as a friend to connect better, to your point. But I saw the speech at the Obama Center, and then I saw your post today on LinkedIn. I was actually going to bring it up, but you brought it up for me, which is great. And I thought it was wonderful because, again, It's very super. Hey, how are you? Oh, good, great. Oh, yeah. And you're saying it almost kind of routinely versus meaningfully, right? And it becomes meaningful when the question isn't, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" Like, great, but hey, so what's going on with you today? Like, how are you feeling? And the sincerity in it, which is real, allows people to feel vulnerable and feel heard. And that's what we kind of all want. We all want to feel heard, whether it's with a spouse, a parent, a friend, or a boss. And what you're doing by creating environments like that is incredibly human.
Well,
And I
it's something super simple, but like, we do it at Life is Good. And it was very interesting because at Life is Good, Bert and John, who are the founders of the for-profit side of Life is Good, their mom used to at the dinner table every night say, "Tell me something good." And so everyone had to kind of go and find something good that happened in that day. Well, we love it and Life is Good starts out almost every business meeting. Tell me something good. What's going on in your life? And it can be work related. It doesn't have to be work related. And I had shared that with a colleague, Bessel Vanderkolk, who's a trauma clinician. His response to me was, if you really want to have profound relationships, why don't you ask people to tell them something bad? And I think, I don't think it's one or the other. And so I say, like, what we do on the Playmaker side is before all of our meetings, we start out, we have a ball, and we say, hey, this is the news ball. And the news ball is an opportunity. All of us got stuff going on in our life. Some of us got really exciting news, fun news, happy news, sad news, scary news, overwhelming news. But sometimes with news, it's helpful to share it. So sometimes really exciting news shared is twice the joy, or really sad news or hard news shared is half the burden. And so this is just an opportunity. You don't have to, but if anyone has news before this meeting that they want to share, here's an opportunity. We got the news ball, and someone will call for the news ball. Hey, I just want to say, my daughter's getting married next week, and we're really excited. And they'll share that news. Someone else will say news like, I just got some news about a cousin of mine who is fighting cancer, and we got some real bad prognosis, and we're just opportunities to listen to the news and not try to solve it or listen or go deep, but thank people for sharing the news. And when anyone else have any news? Anyone else have any news? Okay, cool, let's dive in. Thank you. But it doesn't take long. It's
No, it
five
doesn't.
minutes.
Yeah.
And sometimes we got to be like, okay, enough news. Like people get excited and we got stuff and like, okay, one more news ball. And then we got to jump back in because we got a pretty full agenda.
Right.
But it's helpful when we know what's going on in people's lives and we connect with them on a human level.
Yes.
And I think sometimes we race for efficiency, or that's not professional. We're here about business and we're not here to share. It's like, yeah, I mean, we're humans.
Yes.
We're doing work together as a team.
And
And
that's where you're
teams,
spending most of your time awake,
absolutely.
is with that team. And I love the idea that you're allowing, and I think to your when you said it's sharing half the burden, right? It's a little cathartic for people, and that release of it. I mean, we usually do stuff more so on vacations now because the girls are older, but we used to do your rose and your thorn for the day, right? And so we could express what was great and what was not so great. And sometimes we all had the same thorn. Sometimes we didn't. Sometimes the thorn was just me. But the idea that you can do that in a work environment, I think, is tremendous. And I know it's semantics sometimes, but I actually think it's meaningful. I look at your title, right? Your title is Chief Playmaker, basically, as opposed to the rigid title of a CEO. Do you think if more companies changed the semantics of that title, that employees' mistakes that are made or daily missions might actually change along with it? Because even though because you get caught up because you see CEO, right, and it's like, oh, it's the CEO versus, hey, it's the Chief Playmaker. you're doing the same thing.
If it's authentic, so I think like
Yes.
it's you can change the title and change the words, but if you act the same way, it doesn't really matter.
Well, of course not. I agree.
And so like I think that um there was a piece of that when somebody said, "Hey, you're going to be the CEO." I was like, "Dude, do I look like a CEO to you?" Like I just didn't feel like
Right.
I'm not an executive officer. I'm a playmaker. And so like I like that title. It was kind of fun, but I think that the title alone, I mean, we do a lot of stuff with titles. Like for instance, we don't have a leadership team. I don't like this is the leadership team because it makes anyone else who's not on it, all of a sudden we're saying they're not a leader. Like, don't you want leadership to be from everyone? Don't you want people to lead in different moments? So, like, to have a leadership team, I don't like that vibe. I don't think it's helpful. So, we call our team, we're the navigation team. Like, it's our responsibility to navigate kind of where the organization is going. Um, and I also didn't love the term manager
Hmm.
because I don't know a lot of adults that want to be managed.
Yep.
And so I started saying like, "Hey, we're guides. You're their guide." And again, like if it was just the words, but we didn't know where they were coming from, and we weren't actually practicing that, treating someone like you're guiding them and helping them get to where they got to go as opposed to managing them and putting them in their place, well, then the name alone won't do any good. So, I think that it is helpful provided that you back up the concept with your actions and your behavior.
Of
So if
course.
you're a navigation team, are you allowing other people to lead? Or are you acting like you're the leaders and everyone else's opinion doesn't matter? Um, because if you say you want to see other people emerge and show leadership from moment to moment, and then you don't allow them to do that, who cares what you call
Yeah, it's
it?
meaningless.
And it was kind of the same thing with like, our team that does workshops. I was like, I don't like to call myself a trainer. Like sometimes I like it, but like I kind of see myself as a guide. Again, the same kind of thing. Like I see this as we started we don't call it a training, we call it a discovery. Because we're talking about things we're not that when you come in and you say you're giving a training, it's like I have knowledge you don't, I want to teach it to you. Where our stuff is saying, hey, this is a discovery. This is about kind of uncovering things that we know at our core, and we're going to do it together. And if I'm providing this kind of discovery for early child care professionals, I'm like, hey, you guys are experts in early childhood education. You bring that expertise. I'm going to bring some expertise in play and using play as a healing modality. If we can put our expertise together, we're going to create some pretty amazing stuff. That feels very different than me coming in and saying, I'm the trainer and I'm going to teach you a whole bunch of stuff. And so, I think the words are important provided you back it up with your behavior and your action and your intentionality.
No, I agree. And you know what's interesting, what sort of comes to light for me with the words that you use, like guide and navigator, is that if you think about life in general, life is a journey, right? And so this is part of people's journey, what you're doing. It's not a workplace, but it's a journey through discovering the things that they can do differently and how they can help people. So, I mean, it all sort of fits within that idea of how life progresses as a journey through life. And so I like the language that you're using within your team that supports that. So I think that's great. Um,
Well, yeah, and I think like, the other thing I would say too with that is like because we're human, sometimes we slip. I've
of
had
course.
many meetings where like I got my team and something hits me the wrong way and I'm talking to people and I'll get off the meeting and I'm like, I did not like the way that went. Like I was a little hard on somebody. And just like that navigation analogy. I noticed it. Now I can recalculate. And I'm really quick when I do that to pick up the phone. Hey, do you got a minute? Hey, sorry, but at that meeting, I didn't feel good about it. And I feel like I was a little hard on you guys and X, Y, and Z. And I want to apologize because that wasn't my best self. And, it's not that I don't, I'd say like everything that I told you about, I still feel strongly about the direction and kind of where we fell short and what we need to do. But it wasn't expressed well. And you guys deserve to be talked to with more respect and love than that. So that's on me. And, it serves me, it served me well. It doesn't mean you can keep doing it over and over again and keep apologizing, and so part of that is, if you keep apologizing because you keep blowing your cool, well, then it's just, okay, now
It's
we got to
empty.
know the routine.
Yeah.
But I think this idea that, you come at it with a growth mindset and, and always feel like we can be better as leaders.
Yeah. And I think the key is when you acknowledge where you've fallen short. Because when you are guiding people and you fall short and you acknowledge it, not only do they appreciate it, but they feel comfortable when they fall short to say, hey, I messed up today, knowing that it's okay, right? Too many times people are afraid to ask for help, to admit when they're wrong because they're afraid of the ramifications of it. But if they know that the person who's guiding them does the same thing, then it makes it easier for them to have a better conversation around the mistakes that they may have made because they know that they can. And to me that's the core tenet of any great leader is saying, "Hey, I've messed up and I'm sorry." And then they'll feel comfortable doing the same thing. So I think that's wonderful.
And I also think, Todd, like, and maybe this is like I'm getting, there does have to be for all of us accountability.
Of course.
Sometimes when people talk about leaders and they're so kind and apologetic, well, they're soft. It's like you don't have. That's not soft. Especially, if, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like you can be incredibly kind and hold people accountable to standards, and you know, and it doesn't mean I've seen very strict people who still talk to people with incredible respect and dignity and tell them, hey, listen, this can't, I hear what you fell short. And I get it, Todd, that you fell short on this thing and we do make mistakes, but here's the deal. In this position, you can't consistently fall short on this milestone.
Right.
And so if this thing can, if we continue to, if it continues to fall short, this may not work out. Because we need, that level sometimes when you're on a team, and it doesn't matter what the team is, where you hold your team to very high standards, people got to meet goals or they don't make a team.
Of course.
I'm watching that with my son. My son is 15 now. He's playing club baseball, and he's gotten cut from teams. When he was 7 and 8, you didn't get cut. Just get in there and play. But the stakes are higher, and everyone is clear what this club is about. And I've had coaches that like, hey, Ben, love you, loved your effort. I love what we're doing here, but I got to tell you, man, you batted 198. And unless you can improve that batting average, you're not going to get called up to the 14 and over team. And I'm pulling for you and I want to help you and I want to make all these things happen because I care a lot about you, but I need you to perform. And, I've seen, it's funny because my son has a coach right now. And I'm not going to shout him out. If he ever watches this podcast, he'll probably know he's the exact opposite of me in how he treats the boys. He is hard. He is, will potentially raise a voice. He calls people out. But there's something refreshing about what he's doing with this group of 15-year-old boys. Because he's old school. He doesn't apologize. He says, hey, guys, I'm not for everyone. If you don't want to be pushed this way, you probably want to play on a different team. But I have high expectations for you, X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to ride you to achieve them. And again, I don't agree with all the approaches, but I'm glad my son's playing baseball on this particular team.
Yeah.
And I know he can get some of the warm fuzzies from me and the extra love. Um, but sometimes we gotta recognize that even though somebody is very kind and respectful, it doesn't mean that's going to allow us to underperform.
No, I completely agree with you. But again, I think you find that balance because to me, what happens is in a work environment, if you don't have somebody who's kind and respectful and is just constantly pushing and riding and not acknowledging when you are seeking help or when you're vulnerable, what happens is you go home and the domino effect is pretty obvious, right? Like you're going to be frustrated. You're going to take it out on your family. The kids are going to mirror that behavior. They're going to in turn use it the next day when they're at school and they're in a situation, as opposed to having somebody. Yes, kindness isn't just about holding somebody's hand. It's about being truthful and honest with them, but doing it in a way that isn't so debilitating that they no longer want to express when they're vulnerable or when they've made a mistake. And there's that
Absolutely.
balance. But yeah, I mean, listen, with 15-year-old kids, sometimes getting a little grind is okay because, sometimes they need it because they haven't found their way yet. But when we're talking about adults in a workplace who are spending the vast majority of their waking hours as adults there, it still needs to be an environment where they feel heard, no matter how
Absolutely.
that happens. And clearly, you guys have done a remarkable job of it because you keep your folks there. And again, you are in very difficult environments where the people you're working with are the most vulnerable people around, right? Whether they've been families who've experienced the murder of a child in a school shooting or a traumatic natural disaster. And to me, I think the what I love about what you guys are doing, and you in particular, is that you're finding a way to get down to people's level to understand what's happening with them, and then using your skill set to try to lift them back up. Again, even if it's that small little micro um, sense of kindness, but doing that because we need that. And if more people do that and more people see that, then there'll be less of a need for it.
Well,
Does that
yeah,
make
and
sense?
and does, and I think with one of the things that we have to remind people of sometimes is when you do something very kind for another human being, the emotional benefit that you receive from doing that is every bit as great or not, or if not greater than the person that you're helping. Like, this idea that when you are of service, when you are of value to somebody, when you actually help somebody, when you are compassionate towards somebody, um, the giver of that help and compassion is rewarded in incredible ways from a social, emotional, psychological standpoint. Actually, more so. I always mention my dad, but he used to talk about, like, hey, if you want to make a friend for life, let them do you a favor.
Hmm.
He was like, don't just do them a favor. Because I would much rather do a favor for you, Todd. Because if you do a favor for me, there's a way, like there's a saying in Haiti that the giving hand is always on top. There's somehow this power. When I do a favor for you, I'm the powerful one. But if I allow you to do something for me, well, that's a different experience. And I think sometimes, like, you know, sometimes helpers, when people try to help them, they don't want to take it. It's like, no, man, accept help from somebody else because you're actually helping them by allowing them to have that moment where they felt that they were able to help you. And so, I think that there's that really important piece is knowing that when you give love and give support and give kindness, you benefit.
You're
These are things
100%
that
right.
actually allow people to feel happy and fulfilled in ways that wealth and fame, you know, can't sustainably do.
Well, I will tell you, I appreciate the favor you've done for me today.
What's that?
by coming on the podcast.
Dude, are you kidding me?
No, I really do, because for me, these conversations are hugely beneficial to me as an individual, and knowing that our conversation, even if one person watches this podcast and benefits from it, that's huge. Like, that's the whole idea here, is that, looking for opportunities to spread positivity to others in the world who can then take that. It's like, do you remember, I mean, granted, you don't have the hair, but
I used to.
um, in the late 70s, there was that Breck hair commercial. Do you remember that?
And they
It
told
was
two friends, and they told two friends, and
friends,
they told
and
two friends.
exactly, and that's the idea here, is that when you can do that and people learn from it, it grows exponentially, and we find ourselves in a situation where all the bad stuff that's happening gets drowned out by the
Well,
better stuff.
and Tom, my father's a mathematician. So if you do a kind act for two people, and you tell each of those person all you got to do to return the favor is do something kind for two people of your own,
Yeah,
by the 20th link in that chain, over 1 million people have been helped.
that's crazy. I,
The
I
math
would
is,
believe that statistical analysis for sure.
well, I mean, 'cause then he would do it because he was good, like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and it went on, and all of a
Yeah,
sudden, 1 million just popped up. It's it's
yeah,
it's wild. And so, we got to do that. And we
we
got to
do.
get off the freaking phones and think we're going to do it by just I had a friend of mine whose dad passed away. And I picked up the phone. I gave him a call the other day, and he said, dude, I appreciate the call. This is the first call I've gotten. Because everyone's responded, but I get text and something on Facebook and something here, and it's just something different. And I think that we have to get up close and personal. We gotta be able to talk to people and take the time and not just do it through technology. At work, too many people are cutting and addressing difficult things with an email or a Slack or this. When just put your freaking phone down and walk over to somebody's desk and say, hey, can you take a minute? Or let's hop on a phone and take a walk and talk it out. I just can't keep banging emails back and forth and text message back and forth where things get lost in translation. You can't read tone. And so
Yeah.
any sensitive issue, it's like, you know what? I'm not going to send an email. Let's set up a time to talk. And so many things can be misread on quick communications because people don't want to take the time to talk to each other.
Well,
Much easier
it's a
just
unilateral communication, and it flies in the face of the concept of having a shared humanity. The only way to have a shared humanity is if you're actually sharing something where there's a give and take. Either, I mean, this is not ideal, but it's better than just picking up your phone and texting or sending the email where it takes time to respond, versus having the quick back and forth and seeing somebody's face, seeing their reactions, engaging that behavior, where, again, to your point, things can get misconstrued. So I completely agree with you. It's a necessary evil in some circles, but I think when we can avoid it, we're always better off to
and
have a
I
face to.
agree. And look at Mr. Rogers, bro. Let's go back. The guy's a what did he do? He talked calmly, kindly, warmly, saw people, simple. There was nothing complicated that he did that made people feel comfortable in his presence or seen and loved and valued by him. And we can take that lesson, even just in his eye contact and tone of voice through the screen. Even if we just think about our facial expressions when you're talking to somebody, how we look at them, how we speak to them, our cadence. Hi, I'd like to talk to you today about, I mean, there wasn't, you don't have to be that, but there was an energy, there was a cadence, there was a vibe, there was a patience, there was a love. And so sometimes it's not exactly about what you say, it's about how you say it.
Oh, it's always about that, for sure.
So, so I know I could ramble on for another podcast, but if you invite me back, we'll go more.
Well,
And
I
I
appreciate
appreciate
it.
you inviting me. It was a pleasure to speak with you. You're one of the kindest, most genuine guys I know, brother.
Well, it's the feeling's mutual. So thank
Thank
you
you.
again. And we'll talk soon and have a great day, everyone.